In the summer of 2009 or 2010, I would go with my family to the free school lunches hosted by the public schools in my area. During that time, I became friends with a boy around my age. I think he was about 11 at the time. Our families knew each other well, so we always met up and hung out at these events quite often. We'll call the boy Ray. Ray had a history of causing problems. Before we'd officially met, about a year or so before, Ray had staged a home invasion and made it appear as if he had been kidnapped. It resided in a county-wide hunt, which my parents were also a part of. He was eventually spotted by a stranger, who just so happened to have seen the news on him, and she called the police right away. In the end, he admitted to having staged it all, but was never made to apologize or face any consequence. He had become bitter over the adoption of 2 new brothers, and had made it well known. I could never really figure out why, though. Anyway, the summer after the manhunt fiasco, I, with my incredibly naive mind, I thought that everyone was judging him a bit too harshly. I became his friend, and at these free lunches we would always hang out. A couple of years go by with us being friends, and I've just entered my teens. It was the day before my birthday. Ray had been left alone with the 2 brothers, and I guess he saw his chance. Some details are unclear, but it's speculated he went after the older one, the 10 years old, first. He grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed him repeatedly. Not just stabbed, he almost filleted him open. Then he went to the younger one, then 4 years old, and did the same to him. Ray fled from the house, and the family came home to see that awful scene. The police caught up to him that night, and he showed no remorse. I, of course, was heartbroken at the thought my friend would do something so terrible. It was like something out of a movie, not real life. A couple of years go by, and now Ray is in prison. He attacked another inmate, fully intending to kill him. This, of course, hit the news. I was about 15 then. Another heartbreak for me. He's a literal sociopath, and it took quite a while for that to sink in for me. I struggled with this betrayal of someone who I considered to be a close friend. But now, as an adult, I don't have much sympathy for him. We'll never cross paths again, and that's just fine with me. This happened in August of 2013. I was visiting Montreal for their Diver Site weekend, which was basically like Pride but took place the long weekend before the official Montreal Pride. My best friend at the time had met a guy at Toronto Pride a month earlier, and he invited both of us to come there so my friend wouldn't be uncomfortable going to spend the weekend with someone he didn't know. We arrived on Thursday, and the trip was going pretty great. We went out the first night, walked the streets that were closed off to cars the next day, and our host made us a nice dinner. We went out again on Friday night. Just a quick note before I get into what happened. I partied quite a bit with drugs at this time, and I also in the past had a tendency to lose my cell phone. So for about a year prior, I stopped taking my cell phone with me whenever I went out. So that Friday night we went out to a club. Parking, which has sadly since closed. It was another pretty fun night. The music was great, and the tequila shots were incredibly cheap. I was dancing and moving all around the club, but would circle back and check in with my friend and our host. I would also run into people that I knew who were also visiting from Toronto, and ended up taking some MDMA from one of them. Danced some more until I was completely soaked in sweat, so I went to the bathroom to wipe myself down and pee. When I got to the bathroom, there was somebody leaving, but it looked like I was the only one in there. I went and used the stall because I have a hard time using the urinal, and once I came out, I was quite surprised to see a man in the corner of the washroom, standing and smiling at me. He looked to be in his mid-30s, on the shorter side and a bit chubby. He was wearing a polo t-shirt and jeans, and had glasses as well. I remember thinking when I saw him that he reminded me of some sort of accountant. I'm not sure why that thought popped into my head. I was pretty sure I'd never heard the door open, but I couldn't be 100%. So I smiled back and said hello as I went to wash my hands. "Hello," he responded. "Are you having fun tonight?" I replied that I was and that the music was incredible and was wiping myself down with paper towels. "Do you want to do some coke with me?" he asked. No, this was not the first time I'd been offered coke in a bathroom at a nightclub, and had done this in the past as well. I ended up having some good experiences and met some interesting people. I was already high and drunk anyway, so I didn't think too much of it. "Sure, I would love to, thanks. I just live right near here. It's at my place if you don't mind coming over. We can do some lines and have a drink, then walk back to the club." Obviously, looking back, I realize how extremely dumb my following actions were, and I can't imagine myself being so stupid and careless now. But without thinking, I agreed to it and left with him. The club allowed you to re-enter if you had a wristband. We chatted a bunch on the walk over to his place. He asked me where I was from because I didn't seem like I was from Montreal, what parties I had gone to, how old I was, and my name. I asked his name as well, but he instead responded that we had arrived. The whole walk felt like just 5 minutes, but honestly I hadn't been paying much attention to where we were going actually. His apartment was in this building that had 3 floors, and his unit was on the second. You had to climb this long, narrow metal staircase, and his door seemed to be in the middle of 2 other apartments on either side. He unlocked the door and let me in first, flicked on the lights, and told me to make myself comfortable. I was walking and noticed he had carpet, so I turned around to ask him if I should take my shoes off, when I noticed he was locking the door from the inside with a key above the regular lock. In that moment, I was overwhelmed with a feeling of dread I had never felt before. The danger I had possibly put myself in another city, no phone, nobody knows where I am, and now seeing this person locking their door from the inside with a key. I thought to myself, I'll pretend I didn't see that. I won't take off my shoes. I'll politely hang out for a few minutes and then ask to head back. I also thought I could be having an extreme overreaction to what I saw, because I was high as fuck. But as I looked around, everything inside me was screaming that I needed to get out of here. I went and sat on the arm of the couch. He said I should take my shoes off and relax. I was getting a better look at him now in the lights of his apartment. He looked plain and unassuming, but his eyes looked shifty, and he pulled down both of the shades on the windows that were on each side of the door. I told him that I was okay. I was eager to get back to dancing, so he said he would make us drinks and then we could go back. The apartment looked much bigger inside than it did from the street. It was an open layout with the living room beside the kitchen, and then a hallway in the middle with closed doors painted black. I could hear music coming from one of them. I asked him if someone else was there, as he came from the kitchen with a glass. He replied that there wasn't. As he handed me my glass, he looked me up and down. I wasn't wearing a shirt at the time. He said with this increasingly creepy smile spreading across his face, "You have a very beautiful body, especially your chest. Would you mind if I took some photos before we went back?" Every alarm bell is going off in my head now, and all I can think about is Jeffrey Dahmer and all his Polaroids and what I'm going to do. It was such a creepy thing to say. All I could manage was a polite laugh as I take in a drink and say, "Sure." "Excellent," he says. He then tells me to take off my shoes. He's going to get the coke and his camera to finish my drink. He walked down the hall, takes out his keys and unlocks the second door. He opens it just enough to slip in and closes it behind him. The second that door was closed, I jumped up, ran over to the sink, and dumped my drink. I put my shirt on and ran to the front door. I was able to turn and unlock the regular lock, but the door would still not budge. I kept turning and pulling and twisting, but nothing would happen. Then I heard from behind me, "What are you doing?" I turned around. He was standing at the base of the hallway with one of those professional cameras slung around his neck, holding a square mirror with a pile of white powder on it. I thanked him for the drink, gesturing to my empty glass, but it was getting late, and I wanted to get back. We could exchange numbers and maybe meet up tomorrow if he wanted. His demeanor changed. He was still smiling, but his tone when he next spoke sounded extremely irritated. He asked me if I was nervous about taking the photos. I should just wait for my drink to relax me. I said no, I wanted to go right now. This exchange of him telling me to stay and me saying no went back and forth for about a minute when he suddenly glared at me, put down the mirror, pointed at the couch and said, "Sit down now." Not knowing what to do or how I was going to get out of this, I remembered that there were other units on each side of us, and it had to be around 2:30 in the morning at this point, so I started screaming at the top of my lungs like a madman, banging on the doors and windows, the walls even. "Shut up! Be quiet!" He snapped at me as he ran to the door. He quickly unlocked it and shoved me out, then stepped aside. I bolted out that door and down the stairs, skipping the bottom steps. I hopped over the side of the railing. I looked up behind me when I landed. He wasn't there, but I heard a door slam and took off running down the street. I hadn't paid attention to the walk there, so I didn't know which way to walk, but I knew I was relatively close by, and luckily I was able to wave down a passing taxi and take it back to the bar. When I got back, I found my friend in the same spot dancing. The whole incident must have been less than half an hour. I was too embarrassed about how stupid I had been, and being back in the club, I started to feel bad that I had just freaked out on this nice man. I didn't say anything, but I stayed by his side until we left shortly after I got back. The entire thing felt quite surreal, and I remember the next day when I did tell my friend, kind of laughing it off and joking about getting murdered, trying to make light of it because it was so damn scary. It wasn't until years later after joining Reddit and this sub, reading other stories, that I started to think about that night more and more, and realized just how much potential danger I'd put myself in. I'm a 28-year-old female living in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm an indigenous mix and stand at 5'4". A lot of personal reasons have led up to me being in the position I was for several years. And to sum it up, I come from nothing and have no family support. This means from age 19 to 28, I ended up working as an escort through agencies in order to have income. It was always on and off, and honestly quite embarrassing. The trauma still lingers in my mind. To this day, I cannot relax fully and always monitor my surroundings, even if it's from my peripheral vision. I have many stories related to working in the industry, as us girls call it. I may submit more stories in the future, as I do have a lot of odd and scary encounters. I want to start by saying I'm very introverted. I mind my business and don't do drugs or party. I like to be in and out and leave with some sanity and dignity. My story happened in 2018 when I worked at a studio in Edmonton. I started working mainly nights, which meant I was in studio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. We're legally licensed working girls for safety and legal aspects. We accept all types of people, sex, and races. This means I work with both females and males. This studio had approximately a dozen females and one transgender woman that I've previously worked with and met in a different studio. I'll call her Kat. I'm not judgmental, and I don't hate anyone based on their identity or how they choose to live. I do judge based on how someone treats me, though. Kat was currently the receptionist/housekeeper/working girl at this studio. Kat was previously in the military, prior to transitioning. Guys did not step out of line, knowing Kat was down the hall. This was a bonus for us girls. We felt somewhat safer. I had worked at this studio for about a month before things started to get a bit odd. I started to notice that Kat's demeanor was slowly changing towards me, from friendly to an ominous energy. I would catch her watching me intently, and even copying me when I would do my makeup like she was competing with me. Weird, but I shook it off every time something happened. Work started to get busier with clients, and Kat had been offering to greet and put my clients in rooms before I started my sessions. She even offered to clean up my room when I was done, which meant I paid her at the end of the day for this assistance. I greatly appreciated the help, especially on busy days. Kat would snicker and laugh under her breath when she would clean my room. A bit odd, but I brushed it off. As time went on, though, Kat would make comments, and one particular one caught my attention. I won't repeat what she said, but it was something that occurred while behind closed doors during a one-on-one appointment with a client. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. There was absolutely no way she could have known that this had occurred, so red flags immediately started going off. I didn't say anything and walked away, trying to decipher what I just heard. I went to our staff lounge and told the owner what had just happened, and she seemed horrified as well. As soon as Kat went out for a smoke, the owner immediately told me to go check the room for any hidden cameras. I didn't find anything at first, but my gut instinct was telling me otherwise. Over a period of time, the owner and I came to a conclusion that Kat was possibly putting and removing the cameras when setting up and cleaning my room, as per appointment. This made sense since we couldn't ever find them anywhere. Random comments had not stopped, and the ominous demeanor continued. I mentioned this to some of my coworkers, and they had told me some stories and drama that Kat had been linked to, so everything began to verify that I wasn't paranoid or crazy. Other girls didn't trust Kat and refused assistance from her, so I began to refuse as well. Everyone had their own negative story now of experiences with her. Eventually, I got so fed up of the drama and unprofessionalism, since the owner refused to fire or address the incidents, I started showing up less and bailing on shifts. After a few months, I ended up leaving the studio. Kat eventually stopped working there, and I've not seen her since, thank God. From what I was told, she stopped working, and no studio will hire her now. I think it has something to do with lots of similar incidents. I never reported this to Vice, but I wish I had. Vice is a unit that works with the government and police, and monitors the studios to make sure girls have their alias IDs and aren't being trafficked or forced to work against their will. To this day, I regret not reporting Kat or the owner. My privacy was violated, and I have to live with the humiliation of these experiences. Being an escort is not all glam and luxury. There are far darker aspects to this lifestyle. I don't recommend it, and if anyone has been in this position, please be aware of your surroundings and tell someone if something feels wrong. I'm 33 years old, and this took place when I was around 4 or 5. I want to start by saying that up until about 3 years ago, I had always thought that this was just a dream, though I now believe that this is a memory, and I'll tell you why at the end. I grew up in a little community called Burton, British Columbia, which is not even large enough to be called a town or village. It's right outside of Naksuk, BC, in the Kootenays of British Columbia. I think this is important because this area is both very, very rural and known to have a high amount of strange sightings. So, as I said, I was about 4 or 5 years old, and this memory is oddly vivid compared to others from that age. We lived in a trailer, though not in a trailer park. Neighbors were few and far between. Anyways, my bedroom was the last door on the right, and my mom's bedroom was at the very end of the hall. I was lying in my homemade loft waterbed, and was on my right side facing my open bedroom door. My mom and her boyfriend were in their bed, talking quietly, and I could see the light from her bedside lamp reflecting off the hallway wall outside my door. This is going to sound strange to say the least, but all of a sudden, a very tall dog man steps into my doorway and just stands there for a minute, watching me. I remember being instantly terrified and completely frozen in fear, probably shock as well. He starts walking towards me. I try to scream, but it gets stuck in my throat, and all I can get out is a tiny squeak. So this man walks up to stand beside my bed, and because I'm in a loft bed, he doesn't have to bend down or anything, but he reaches out and picks up my arm and puts it in his mouth. And that's it. I don't remember being bit. I don't remember him or it leaving. I don't even remember talking to my mom about it, but somehow I've never forgotten this. Now, about 3 years ago, I was online and happened across the accounts of Marco Polo on the island of Enga Monane. He spoke of encountering these dog-headed barbarians, which were a race of men with heads of mastiff dogs or something. While reading about this, I came across a painting and several sketches of this cynocephalus, as they're called. As soon as I saw the painting, it was like something in my brain just clicked. I instantly thought of my dream, and somehow I knew it wasn't a dream at all. It was a memory. I can't explain it, and in the last 3 years I've wondered endlessly what happened after I lost my memory of that night, what it means and why it happened. I know this sounds crazy, but I believe this 100% happened to me. Could it have been a dream? Sure, maybe. Sleep paralysis? I don't know. But if I were going to concoct some dog-headed monster up in my 5-year-old imagination, I think it would have been a werewolf, as they were all I were familiar with at that age, and until recently. I recommend looking up the Andaman Islands and cynocephaly or Marco Polo's dog-headed race, and you'll come across more than a few stories of people encountering this all through history. Has anyone else ever heard of something that sounds like this? What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. I got an unfortunate announcement for you guys tonight. You might have noticed that a lot of my videos have been deleted or put onto the unlisted category. That's because I just recently got 2 copyright strikes all at once. So if I get one more, my channel will be deleted. So I can't really do much about that except for remove everything, I guess. Just hope that somebody just doesn't decide to strike me and delete my entire channel. So from now on, I might be posting a little less often, or at least not posting Reddit stories or the Let's Not Meet as often. If I can get permission for the stories and make sure they're not gonna go crazy on me, then yeah, sure, I'll do some videos. But other than that, I don't really want to risk it right now. I can't until April or all my stuff will get deleted. If you guys want to help me out for a couple of months and send in your stories, it doesn't really matter how long they are, as long as they're, grammatically correct and everything and are easy to read. I'll go ahead and read those, and we'll try to make it by on that if you guys are up for it. If you guys decide to send in a story for me, please be sure to include in the tagline how you would like the story to be named, how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in, and the category of the story if it has one. Links to all my social media will be in the description below, including my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail accounts. I also have a link to my second channel, which I will put in there, that I just made, just in case this one gets destroyed. You guys can go subscribe there, and we'll do some stuff like web novel readings and maybe continue the scary story stuff if this one does get deleted. Other than that, please be sure to let me know in the comments what you guys think. Please be sure to leave any feedback, like, share, subscribe if you feel so inclined. Those really help me out. They promote me on the YouTube algorithm, especially since I've had to delete so many videos. Please be sure you click that bell as well, because I could really use all the support I can get right now. If you guys are curious about the music or the art used in the video, that's listed in the description as always. And I hope you guys have a good day. That's all for now, I think.